Dear friends, I think it is really a great honor and a privilege to have you here today. Thank you very much for coming at this 11:30 a.m., which is now almost 11:35. This is a good Balkan tradition. You realize that you're no more in North America, intellectually and spiritually, by our late start. Thank you very much for coming. We have organized. I'm Ivan Dinev Ivanov. I'm from the Bistrica chapter, and of course we have our colleagues and friends from the yes, we are, and we have our colleagues and friends from the Pirin chapter who together we have worked to have a presentation on the occasion of Todor Aleksandrov, who is the intellectual inspirator, a founding father. There's a chapter named after him at the MPO. He was, of course, the penultimate historical leader of the international MRO, the guy who restored the organization. So this is a privilege for us to be here and to talk about, especially in the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And especially given that the state of Michigan actually extended a great gesture by recognizing the contributions and the heritage that different groups, including and especially Macedonian Bulgarians, have made to this country and to this great state. Actually, yesterday was the 100th anniversary of the assassination, of the brutal assassination of Todor Aleksandrov near the village of Sugarev. So Stoyan Delchev will tell us a little bit about Aleksandrov himself, his and if you want to, Stoyan, you can. No, you can. Do you want to walk, or do you want? If you want to, yeah, yes. And then you can, if you need a pointer, he'll tell us a little bit about his biography. So to get to know a little bit the founding father, then we'll talk about some of his ideas, the role of his ideas, the impact, how the idea of independent Macedonia was born, and why and how it matters, and how the personality of Aleksandrov matters. So Stoyan, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
No, Professor, you're a professor. Have a seat here. Or you stand or whatever you want.
All right, dear guests, it's my pleasure to represent our national hero. So, because we're a little late, we're going to start right away. He was born on March 1881 in Novoselo, and how Ivan said, on the 31st of August, it's 100 years after, we just got 100 years after he was assassinated. So, in 1898, he finished Bulgarian school in Skopje and became a Bulgarian teacher in town in Kalchani, Krapovo, village of Vinica, and Štip. After that, he went and attended the Saints Cyril and Methodius Bulgarian Men's High School in Solun. And here he met the head of the school, Hristo Matov, who actually recruited Todor Aleksandrov into the IMRO. In 1903, Todor Aleksandrov distinguished himself as an extraordinary leader and organizer of the Kochneri revolutionary district. He was arrested later by the Ottoman authorities on March 1903. And after that, after this arrested, he's supposed to stay 5 years in a jail. But 1 year later, he'd been released after amnesty. In 1905, Alexander House was surrounded, and he managed to escape. And in 1906, he just joined to the chat of Michel Razvigorov. After that, because he had some health issues, he went to Burgas, where he again goes back as a teacher. But after he found out that Michel Razvigorov been killed, he went back to Macedonia. And in 1907, actually in 1910, he became a member of IMA, International Macedonian Adrianople Revolutionary Organization Community abroad in Sofia. And later, Aleksandrov Cheta traversed through the Skopje region and organized the revolutionary activities. In 1918, Aleksandrov became a member, and later he returned to the Novo Selo when he found out that his house is bombed.
So what I wanted to say is, of course, he had certainly an important impact in the conflicts that happened in the Balkans from 1912 until 1919. Significant impact during the First World War, before World War I, actually, in the First Balkan War, he played a key role in the liberation of Kukush with the Cheta number 52. This is a squad from the Macedonian-Adrianople division. Then, of course, he was part of the Veles squad in the Second War that fought against the Serbs. And finally, of course, he was deeply engaged in getting Bulgaria involved in World War I and participated in the administration of the region of Macedonia. So he was one of the people who had a tremendous perspective. He had a front row seat to what happened in the region, in world affairs during that period. Of course, he first witnessed the disappointment at the Bucharest Treaty when, of course, as we know very well, Macedonia was divided, and it was divided in borders which are somewhat consistent, but not entirely matching. The Strumica district is the major difference between the current day division of Macedonia. That was met by him with a tremendous disappointment. And so at that time, he clearly embraced the idea that Bulgaria that Macedonia is not liberated, that Macedonia needs to be liberated. And the vehicle through which he saw the liberation of Macedonia was by having it join as an integral part of, at that time, Kingdom of Bulgaria, which is why he was involved in Bulgaria's entry into the war in March 1950. And then, of course, after that, in the after the tragic conclusion of the war, he was engaged in the restoration of what was previously known as the Imaro or Vamaoro, Internal Macedono-Adrianople, because it included the Macedonian and the Adrianople, Odrin regions of the organization. Now they dropped the Adrianople part and focused exclusively and mostly in Macedonia, and it became an Imaro or Vamaoro. Not only that, but he saw that as a part of this process, while Imaro was going to operate in the region of Macedonia, but in Pirin Macedonia, which he considered at that time as liberated, free part, and the other two parts, Aegean and mostly Vardar Macedonia, which he and the organization considered as enslaved parts, according to the documents, but he also wanted to have an international wing, and that's how the idea of MPO was created. The Macedonian Patriotic Organization was seen as an organized, extremely well-organized, international representation of the internal Macedonian revolutionary organization, which is why the colors, the coat of arms, and everything that MPO has today is linked to Imaro, particularly to the second Imaro that was restored after the First World War. It was Aleksandrov himself, actually, who played a key role through Imaro in the process of formulating the idea of independent Macedonia, and that was the idea of an independent Macedonia under the leadership of Macedono-Bulgarians. Makedonskite Bulgari, ili Makedonski Bulgari, if you wish. And of course, unfortunately, soon after he restored the organization, he had a tragic death. There are several different theories and explanations as to why it occurred. There's one prevailing theory, which most documents point to. It's the theory of internal factions within Imaro that actually led to his death. So this is actually a document that we wanted to share with you. This was a document that Aleksandrov produced as a part of the Bulgarian armed forces during World War I. In that document, Aleksandrov basically wrote to the king, the commander-in-chief of the Bulgarian military forces on February 25th, 1917, from the front lines, from the trenches, the following. While at the beginning they, referring to the Germans and the Turks as allies, Bulgarian allies, part of the Triple Alliance during World War I, appreciated the services rendered in favor of the Union by the Bulgarian intervention in the war, and were very careful toward us, the Bulgarians. After learning about our internal disadvantages and weaknesses, began to treat us badly. They, referring to our allies, are endeavoring to diminish our importance, to belittle our merits, to gradually take the command of our troops out of the hands of our headquarters, to meddle in our internal affairs. And he says, this is dangerous. This is, that is, in the end, they will not sufficiently and vigorously defend our legal rights over the acquired by force of arms and under treaties old and newly enslaved Bulgarian lands. So think about this, old and newly enslaved Bulgarian lands. That's Todor Aleksandrov in his reference to the Bulgarian commander-in-chief, King Ferdinand at that time. And of course, this is an image of Aleksandrov with his actually cheta. It says the Macedonian partisan troops during the Great War, and they had a committee meeting. That was how the committee meetings looked back then. See the amount of guns and armor. We don't have that anymore. We say that. That's a progress. Some may think about it as progress, you know. The participants include Todor Aleksandrov, Kolyu Lefterov, Slavchu Pirchev, and many others. So you got to understand that the international environment in which Aleksandrov operated was extremely, incredibly challenging, much worse than previous international environments surrounding, say, the Linden Uprising or surrounding the Balkan Wars. After World War I, the Entente had won the war and had a policy of penalizing and going after everybody who caused the war, particularly the Triple Alliance. They wanted and were very much decided to break into different parts the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which they did. They took large chunks of the German Empire. They wanted to penalize and virtually destroy the Ottoman, which they did, empire. And by the virtue of fighting a war with the Greeks, Ottomans, the Turks, Turkish Republic, managed to preserve some of its territory. And of course, Bulgaria's, so to say, head was also on the chopping block. Not only that, but as a result of the war, we had a kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, created in 1918, later becoming Yugoslavia. And in that kingdom, a lot more powerful than Bulgaria, the Father Macedonia and its population was labeled as Southern Serbs and was subjugated to assimilation under the banner of Southern Serbs. Greece also expanded significantly territorially, although its megali idea was curbed at the battlefields of Asia Minor. Nonetheless, Greece, by being defeated in the war, still retained significant portions of the Aegean, well, practically all of Aegean Macedonia. And as a result of that war, Greece was really interested to move about 1.5 million Greeks from Asia Minor into the territory of its existing territory. Guess where they wanted to put them? Well, where you have space and mostly where you have non-Greek concentration of non-Greek population, which is Aegean Macedonia. That's why Greece was interested in doing two things. Cleanse ethnically, particularly the territories that were close to, adjacent to the border with Bulgaria, to reduce any possible claims, territorial claims, any irredentist claims, and then try to assimilate an enclaves like the enclaves of Kostorsku, or cleanse them ethnically, which is how most of current MPO memberships, villages, their grandparents come from the Kosto region as a result of, let's face it, the word that we use in international law is called ethnic cleansing. That's exactly what it is, yes. And then, of course, this is the environment that he had to operate. Now, Uh, he gave an interview and this is what we have prepared for you also. We can go to the next slide, yes, for the Yorkshire Post, which he outlined his position, and what the organization was fighting for. And then he said, first of all, this is a Bulgarian, they call the population, they're Bulgars or Bulgarians from Macedonia or Macedono-Bulgarians. And then he actually mentioned that, as an example, Aleksandrov said that before the war, there were in Macedonia 1,373 Bulgarian schools with 78,854 pupils and 2,866 teachers. There were also 1,139 Bulgarian churches. All of these, of course, were closed, shut down, or transformed into Serbian and Greek institutions right after the end of the war. Hence, he describes that the population in this region lives under terrible conditions, and that is well documented, as we said in the press. He also outlined that his primary area of cooperation will be the Greek, the other non-Serbian elements within the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, alluding mostly to the Croat groups, and we've seen that cooperation throughout the entire interbellum period, or period between the two world wars. What he goes ahead and says is a description of the terrible situation. The Serbians would not even allow the use of Bulgarian language. Today, there was in Macedonia not a single new paper in the Bulgarian tongue, nor did anyone dare even to have a Bulgarian book in his house. Well, that lasted actually for almost 90 years, and maybe to a certain degree today as well. In any village decided to dismiss the Serbian priests who had been imposed upon it or refused to send its children to the Serbian school opened by the force. Such an action was followed by fines, arrest, and not infrequently by assassinations. And then ultimately, he also braced the way for a form of resistance, which was resistance through the restoration of MRO, and also by creation of various organizations, including MPO overseas. Now, you got to also understand, this is actually images from Macedonian Tribune commemorating Aleksandrov decades ago, that you got to understand that he was operating in a very difficult environment, also in its relationship with Sofia. And that was not because Sofia, people in Sofia, the government in Sofia, saw him or his cause as something alien, foreign, or non or anti-Bulgarian, as some certain historiographic narratives might try to teach you. But that's because the Bulgarian government itself was under tremendous pressure to make sure that whatever is happening in Pirin, Macedonia, where the newly restored IMRO operates, is actually under control and suppressed. And so Bulgarian government was offered a deal. Basically, yes, you can have peace with the Serbo-Croat Slovene kingdom, later Yugoslavia. You can have peace with Greece, but that means you have to give up all your armed forces, and you have to accept the existing borders, not defend any minority rights outside, especially in Egypt and Vardar, Macedonia, but also in southern and northern Dobruja. So give up all of that claims, and furthermore, go after any organization that is actually fighting to protect and defend the rights of these groups, And Sofia was pretty much under pressure to do that internationally. Domestically, after fighting 3 wars between 1912 and 1919, after putting the highest per capita manpower, mostly men in uniforms, on the battlefields and in the trenches, and after sustaining about 160 to 170,000 casualties during men killed in combat, the Bulgarian public shifted inside the Kingdom of Bulgaria, and much of it became leftist and pacifist, and was kind of saying, well, we would take the deal of peace even if the price is very heavy. Not because we don't want to take care of the people who are enslaved, but in the end of the day, we have to choose between 2 very, very, very bad scenarios. And actually, if we go to the next slide, you will see that in a speech that was translated in the newspaper Utro, morning, meaning the issue is 4256 in 1923, so months before his assassination. Aleksandrov actually talks about the conflicts with the Serbian government. And of course, remember, Bulgaria is under tremendous pressure to take all possible actions to curb and limit the newly restored immoral activities in Pirin, Macedonia. And so he's being asked, do you really operate in Pirin, Macedonia? And are there any chetas or brigands, coming from Bulgaria? And so he says, this is what he says, this is ridiculous. The Serbs are looking for a pretext to create a single incident that they can use to their benefit. We do not need the help from our compatriots in Bulgaria. We have enough people in Macedonia to take an action the day we decide to do so. We do not lack weapons and ammunition, but we're on hold for now. Next slide. We will act when our hour comes, perhaps in coordination with other groups, mostly the Croats. And on that day, the Macedonians will not forget the oath that they took when joining our organization, which has freedom or death as its sacred motto. You can still see it. It was yesterday at the convention and in any flags and any memorabilia. So this ended the conversations. So what I wanted to tell you, but not everything looked that gloom and dark in this situation, in this environment. In fact, there was a beam of hope, and that beam of hope came from United States, from President Woodrow Wilson. And I know some people today have some doubts about Wilson and some of his legacy, particularly related to his home university, Princeton University. But in fact, we both as Macedonians, as Bulgarians, Macedonian Bulgarians, as MPO, and as different organizations, have to remember that it was Wilson actually who came up with the idea of the 14 points. And the 14 points were intended to serve as a counterbalance by the policy pursued by the Entente, the victor states in World War I, which wanted to penalize as much as they can, make pain and suffering as unbearable as possible for all the countries from the Triple Alliance that participated in the war, and especially countries like Bulgaria that made the war last for as long as it did. So Wilson understood, and you will see that later after World War II, the American foreign policy makers under FDR and Truman continued that idea that if you treat really, really bad the other party, your opponent, that will naturally and inherently create a backlash. So that's why he said, listen, there should be some principles, rules, and norms. Again, somebody who spends a lot of times in academia, like those of us who do that, we know we also always like to have rules, principles, and norms. And most importantly, we try to make sure people comply with them, which doesn't always happen, especially if you're dealing with people from our corner, our neck of the woods, But so he said, listen, we want to have actually rules. And those rules were, first of all, create the principle and the idea of the right of self-determination as a just alternative to the territorial claims of the victor states. Second, create examples that included independent states. Gave examples of Poland, the right of self-determination of the states in Austria-Hungary, the right of Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, to have their own states. Did not mention Macedonia, but it mentioned that those rights of self-determination should be based on historically established lines of allegiance and nationality, and, quote, international guarantees for the political and economic independence and territorial integrity. So if you think about this, this makes it total click, So self-determination based on the rights of historically established lines of allegiance with international guarantees, economic interdependence, territorial integrity. Yes, Macedonia is not a single and has never been in its history. Okay, I don't want to go as far back as 77,000 years or Alexander and Philip, but in its most recent 19th, 20th century history has never been something that is uniform, in terms of, it's always been a mosaic of different identities and nationalities. So what Aleksandrov, Wilson did actually, is said, listen, they have the right of self-determination. Here the political unit is Macedonia. It's a region that is fairly homogeneous. Yes, it's diverse in its population, but it also has a uniformity along historically established lines of allegiance. So Greeks, Turks, Romanians, Bulgarians, Macedonian Bulgarians, Romas, Albanians would also have this sense of allegiance. And that's how the idea of independent Macedonia was brought to the forefront. Independent meant state for all residents, regardless of their ethnicity, which is consistent with a very new and modern concept. In early 19th century, when nationalism was dominating in all of Europe, this was actually a principle of cosmopolitanism and inclusivity. Second, it was also based on the idea that if you give the right of different groups together in a larger region to form an entity, certainly the largest groups in this polity would naturally have the most weight. And while we can discuss what is the exact number, we know for sure that in the early 20th century, we had somewhere between at least 750 to 1.1 or 1.2 million people who in one way or another identified as Bulgarians, Bulgars, Macedonian Bulgarians, Bulgar Millet, or something else, or something similar. So they belong to this group called Macedonian-Bulgarian element. And that would certainly have a lot of weight, in this newly independent Macedonia. Now, I pose that we can have a conversation after that, but does independent Macedonia automatically imply separation from, and this is the phrase that I use from the late Professor Ivo Banac of Yale University, from the Pan-Bulgar complex? Probably it did. We've seen that when certain entities go their own way, certain polities, identities transform and modify, they're constantly evolving, and then you might have different identities. So this is not a problem of diverging identities. This has happened all through, and scholarship has proven. It is a problem of not anticipating forgery of narratives about past events and historical figures in the name of such separatism. And so what we also wanted to use this opportunity, yes, thank you. He's thinking, Stoyan is thinking ahead of me, and I appreciate that. Somebody does think better than I do, straighter, thank you. So this is actually a document from IMRO Directive 66, which basically outlines that exactly cosmopolitan spirit of IMRO from its creation, from its inception under the leadership of Todor Aleksandrov, that all groups of the Macedonian population should participate in revolutionary organization, regardless of their nationality, religion, gender, and political beliefs. The entire population participate in chedas, and then he lists them: Turks, Albanians, Romanians, Greeks, Grekomans. Now, I know it may not be very politically correct to use the word Grekoman today, or Serboman, but that was 1923, and so that's what the terms were legitimate at that time. And of course, the Romas, along with Bulgarians in the same chetas and legal conspiratorial work. And then it says that Macedonian population supports the organization because the organization is set to goal the liberation and unification of Macedonia within its geographical border in a political whole. Remember, this is exactly consistent with the 14 points of the Woodrow Wilson. In political whole in which all nationalities will enjoy equal political and civil rights and will enjoy the same spiritual and cultural freedoms. Furthermore, the directive goes on and says that the Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization will continue in the future to pursue its independent policy, and for the achievement of its goal, it continues to rely on the support of the progressive public opinion throughout the whole world. There you go. This is where MPO fits, the progressive public opinion throughout the whole world, and on all the organizations and groups that have written on their banners defense of the right to self-determination of the peoples. In addition, the revolutionary organization relies on the moral and material support of the Macedonian immigration in, first and foremost, Bulgaria, then America, United States and Canada, Turkey, Russia, Romania, and other countries in whose activities it does not interfere, as well as on the cooperation of all nationalities living in the countries between which Macedonia is divided. And actually, we can show you now, if you are interested, this is a copy of the original document, the original instruction, courtesy to Drago Bogdanov, who is one of the most resourceful individuals of original documents on Macedonia. This is confidential instructions to the illegal groups of the internal Macedonian organization. It clearly says the goal, autonomous, well, he uses the word autonomous, but then you see at the end of the document, independent. So even in 1920, this is from 1923, I think, they're still dancing around with autonomous and independent. But it says autonomous and the Macedonia, independent of the Balkan powers. The means is the creation of a secretive, powerful, elusive organization, invulnerable to its enemies, Greece and Serbia, the enslavers of Macedonia. The organization will work also in coordination with other groups enslaved by the Greeks and Serbs to accomplish these aforementioned goals in all possible way. And then it says, the honest, self-satisfying, and idealist fighters of whom Macedonia needs the most now will easily find the right way to work depending on the conditions on the ground inside, using the traditions and the experience of nearly 30 years revolutionary struggle by doing everything good and useful while avoiding everything bad and harmful. Long live independent Macedonia, June 1921 from the Central Committee, and this is Aleksandrov's signature on the document. So certainly, the purpose of this part was mostly to understand the connection where the idea of independent Macedonia comes from and how Imaro came to the formulation of independent Macedonia in response to both internal in Macedonia, but also external, means in Bulgaria and throughout the international community forces. In the next section, Vasilen will actually, Vasovsky from the Pirin chapter, will talk about his tragic death, and the different theories and explanations that we have related to his death.
I want to thank everybody for coming to this lecture, and especially thank our colleague Ivan for the very detailed and very sound presentation over the course of the life of our hero, Todor Aleksandrov. Now the next slide presents the different theories about his tragic death. We are commemorating 100 years of that day. It was actually 31st of August, 1924. So there are three main theories about the death of Todor Aleksandrov. Of course, the first one, probably one of the most popular ones that certain circles in countries on the Balkans are kind of propagating. The theory is that the government in Sofia is responsible for the death of Todor Aleksandrov. And this is a very ideological theory with very weak explanations. And in fact, many historians, not just from Bulgaria, but from all over Europe, they have books and they have published books and have kind of debunked that theory. The second one is the communist rivals theory. Again, not enough evidence to support it. And the highly likely, the most likely theory is that the death of Todor Aleksandrov is the result of, unfortunately, internal frictions within the organizations or the internal factions, especially the rift with General Protogerov, which was another legendary figure to a certain moment in the history, but at one point became a rival of Todor Aleksandrov. And of course, many of you know about the involvement of Aleku Pasha or Aleku Vasiliev. So we stand behind, I think, that theory that internal factions are responsible for the death of Todor Aleksandrov. We should clearly debunk any theory that links Ivan Mikhailov to the assassination. Unfortunately, this is a theory that is spread by certain circles in Skopje, like this guy Ivan Georgiev. He's a contemporary Macedonian, North Macedonian historian. This is a product of highly ideological narrative that deviates from the evidence and the facts on the ground. Unfortunately, like the death of JFK, in America, there are so many different theories, and probably we're not going to see a clear evidence in one of them. But again, the most likely one is the last one. The tragic death of Todor Aleksandrov is the result of internal controversy and internal frictions with other parts of the organization.
Before we move, just to show you, these were the funeral processions. I'm sorry, the quality is not as good as we anticipated. That's what happens when you borrow a projector. But this is the funeral procession in the town of Kustendil, and then the other one is in the town of Kırjari, which is in the eastern Rhodope Mountains or western Thrace. You know, both of those commemorating his death. Okay. So this is the letter that actually, courtesy to Bojan Lazarevski, who shared it with us. It was a letter that IMRO Central Committee sent to, and we'll keep it short because we want to open the floor for questions and comments, and we don't have that much time left. But the letter that says, "Dear brothers, your letter of condolences from September 24th, the MPO letter, on the occasion of the death of our brother, Todor Aleksandrov's murder moved us enormously. It testifies that the hearts of the honest children of Macedonia, this is the MPO members in 1923, across the ocean beat in unison with the hearts of their brothers and sisters living under slavery, as well as those of the expelled Macedonians who manifested their boundless sorrow for the heavy loss, but also for the unyielding will to continue their activities. Our biggest regret that Todor was not assassinated by a Serbian or a Greek bullet, but he was slain by lunatics and traitors. Unfortunately, there were Judas Iscariots and Cains amongst our brothers and fighters who organized the assassination of the great apostle." So in the next slide, they continue exchanging warm feelings between the two organizations, and says, "Long live the honest and devoted children of Macedonia. Long live the independent Macedonia." Signed by the Central Committee member Alexander Protogerov and the Secretary Ivan Mikhailov. So this is the Protogerov and Mikhailov's signature. And so now you want to go. Yes.
A few pictures giving us more details about the parents of Todor Aleksandrov, and on the big one you see compatriots and also members of the family of Todor Aleksandrov in front of his grave near Sugarevo village. Maybe some of you have been there. Each and every year on the 31st of August, there is a procession that goes there. What is interesting with this bigger picture is that we see the son and the daughter of Todor Aleksandrov. And on the top, these are the parents of our hero. His father's name was Alexander and his mother's name is Maria. And then the last slide, one of the last slides, talks about the memory of Todor Aleksandrov. As you know already from the things that Ivan said, Alexandrov house in Shtip has been demolished by the Turks in 1910. And unfortunately, the remains of it have been blown away by the Tito's regime. That happened in 1966. There was actually a big campaign going over some of the sacred sites of the Bulgarian Macedonians in Vardar, Macedonia, including the grave and the tomb of Colonel Kavarnaliev next to the city of Doiran. Nearby house of Ivan Mikhailov, of course, was destroyed as well. And on the lower left corner, what you see is the present-day situation in Novo Selo Shtip. This is the electric substation on the place where the house has been. And people say that this is the most famous electric substation in Northern Macedonia because there are many people going there to leave flowers and to pay respect to one of the greatest leaders of IMRO. On the top, you see the memorial plate that was put. No, actually, the top one.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. My bad.
No, it's okay. And you see the old Bulgarian norm, alphabetical norm. So it was put there in 1940s, and then in 2014 it was unveiled again. So again, this is the place where the house has been before it was blown away by the Turks. In the middle, you see the bust of Todor Aleksandrov in Sofia, which is placed in the Borisova garden in the heart of the city. And then on the right, something very interesting. We learned about this yesterday, actually during the time of our convention, that very recently a new monument of Todor Aleksandrov was unveiled in his hometown of Štip. So there was some kind of a ceremony, and that happened, I believe, yesterday or a couple of days ago. So this is the big statue Todor Aleksandrov, our hero, now has in Vardar, Macedonia, or in Republic of Northern Macedonia. And then our last slide is a little bit of an article that Ivan Mikhailov wrote about Todor Aleksandrov. It was published in our very own newspaper, Makedonska Tribuna. So he says in that article that is named The Rebirth of the Macedonian Struggle After 1918. Todor Aleksandrov at that time possessed the greatest authority of a Macedonian fighter. It turned out that he had excellent sense and realized that the struggle was necessary once again. And finally, he demonstrated through his greatest will his personal commitment to this struggle under such difficult circumstances. He talks about the time after the end of World War I. With these qualities, he stands out above his contemporaries. With them, he once again prevailed over everyone else. Aleksandrov's behavior at that time was heroic, especially among Bulgarians who are notorious in their desperation, hopelessness, and resignation. Ivan talked already about the state of the Bulgarian nation after the loss of the World War I. He also had enemies, but they too would admit that his will awoke the people's spirit that had been devastated by numerous shared adversities. It brought back to life the Macedonian struggle and once again raised the Macedonian question. The huge part of our healthy society bowed to Todor's work. So that was again an article by Ivan Mikhailov, and it was published in 1952. Vomorov's contribution after 1918 was far greater than that in 1910. Also because the spirit of the entire Bulgarian nation was now in danger. Vomorov's appearance infused a stream of courage among the patriots in free Bulgaria. Many, shaken from their numbness of the defeat, began to step on a firmer ground. Many believed that indeed, however great of a failure, only one failure had been sustained, and that the history of the Bulgarian people did not end with it. So again, that was the thing Ivan Mikhailov wrote in Macedonian Tribune. Any final remarks?
I think, why don't you?
Right, and I think Boyan had something to add. Right.
Since you're speaking the facts, which is very nice. Thank you for the presentation. It's very important to point out that the unearthing of the Todor Aleksandrov plate was done in 1999, in January 1999, when the first MPO Central Committee visited the Republic of Macedonia. There were around 200 people, and it was a big event in Macedonia at that time. It was Professor Delchev speech. We have a number of pictures. Ruben Topchev and myself were there. In Topchev's book, you have details about this. Georginov, Dostadinovska, the whole basically
maybe
were
the
there,
Prime Minister.
and it was it shaped Macedonia at that time. So it's very important. That was the very first visit as soon as Vomerov took power in December of 98. So this was in January, and I can provide you the pictures and documents for that. it was a very big event that the opposition used to attack. I still remember the articles by Franco Garros at that time. I don't want to record this, so I especially with sunglasses in the light. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Beyond the editor of the current editor of Macedonian Tribune will also say a few words. They will reach past the microphone because I only have one of those. So.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? Thank you very much for being present here today for this extremely important presentation. Before I start giving conveying my message, I would like to first of all give a heartwarming welcome to our friends from the presenters for organizing this. Oh, of course. So my name is Boyan Lazarevsky. I am a Central Committee member of the MPO and the current editor-in-chief of Macedonian Tribune. So as we said, can we please give a heartwarming applause to the presenters for this. For this amazing presentation. For the MPO, the Macedonian Organization, should never forget its origins. It was conceived as a political wing of the Europe, the Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, and Todor Aleksandrov himself played a critical role in the establishment of our beloved organization. Through people like Jordan Chkatrov, Peter Radzev, Luban Dimitrov, Nikolov, he brought the iron discipline and the revolutionary spirit of the IMRO into the MPO, and that's one of the factors that have sustained our organization for such a long time now. I would like to start by saying that the spirit of Todor Aleksandrov is more important than ever before now for the MPO. For you see, he had his challenge, his task, his objective was to continue the struggle for Macedonia's freedom and independence. The task was given to him the most unwelcoming time, in the most difficult challenges, where the whole European continent was divided politically. Extreme leftist forces, extreme rightist forces, shrinking center, when the whole European continent was in turmoil in the interbellum period. Todor Aleksandrov, using his authority, his personal charisma, and his emancipatory spirit, he made sure that the IMRO does not get divided. The external divisions would not influence their sacred cause, which was the liberation of Macedonia, of course, and then the biggest ethnic group in Macedonia, which were the Macedonian Bulgarians, who were the founding fathers of the IMRO and of the MPO. So I read, while reading the memoirs of Petar Shandanov, he mentioned a very interesting thing, one other IMRO revolutionary. When he was introduced to the IMRO, Todor Aleksandrov shook his hand and told him, "I know that you're a socialist. I'm against socialism. However, you're welcomed. We have a common enemy. Once we liberate Macedonia, we will agree upon how to settle differences in a democratic way." So this spirit that Aleksandrov instilled in the IMRO sustained him. It made it a formidable revolutionary movement, all present, proud revolutionary movement. After he was assassinated, that all fell apart. IMRO split in several factions, I think you mentioned, and everything else is history. But we need to remember Todor Aleksandrov, and I hope that through this type of presentations, we retain that institutional knowledge, and it will hopefully it will help us sustain the MPO and guide the MPO in the next 100 years. I would just like to thank the Pirin chapter for furnishing those important documents, and also would like to give a special thanks to Todor Aleksandrov from the Institute of the Research for Bulgarian History in Gotse, Delchev, in Bulgaria, who provided us that extremely rare document sent from IMRO to the Macedonian Patriot Organization that you displayed. So kudos to them.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yes, the presentation will be made available in the next issue of the Macedonian Tribune. And yes, I would like to thank you. And yes, let's remember what Aleksandrov did, and let his spirit sustain us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to give an opportunity for folks just to ask them to make a shorter questions, comments, or statements. Please, the floor is open. We have to pass the microphone, so I'll be running around with the microphone. So apologize. Anybody? Come on, you got him. Okay. Start. You want to come up?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sosnanko, Council here in Bulgaria. I was really pleased with the presentation you did. Congratulations for your efforts. Don't forget the fact that these three gentlemen are volunteers, so they spend their free time to do this to us, to educate us, to enlighten us, and I deeply appreciate that. If I had a question, it would be, since we know all achievements of this national hero, which is today part of our common history, I hope that in future it will be recognized by the Historical Commission of both states. I would ask three of you, which one of his achievements you consider as the highest one? Because to me, one of the most significant letters I read from him is the letter, I just sent a copy of it, for the creation of the football club Levski Sofia. So this is, of course, he has many others, but I leave the floor to you to tell me which one of his many achievements was actually the highest one.
I forgot my scarf for Levski upstairs in the room, so I can't use that as an excuse. I mean, listen, this is an interesting question. My short answer would be, I wouldn't rank one achievement or another as the most important. We have to look at the complexity of the processes and the connections among its parts. I mean, I think even the whole idea, the formulation of the idea of independent Macedonia was extremely forward-looking and smart, and given the circumstances, was probably the best thing that you could formulate. So it's a remarkable accomplishment, of course. It's unfortunate that today the idea of independent Macedonia is misinterpreted, wrongfully interpreted, and misrepresented in certain historical narrative in certain countries. And we need to say that in the name and in the spirit of our common European future, those things need to be rectified in order to move forward. That's my thought. Maybe
I agree with Ivan, and I also think that organizing VMRO back after the World War I, to me, is the greatest achievement, because again, you saw in the presentation that the spirit of Bulgarians and Bulgarian Macedonians was very low after the defeat we suffered. So definitely this is one of the highest achievements of our hero, Todor Aleksandrov.
Yeah. For me, Todor Aleksandrov's achievements was that he never gave up. Doesn't matter how situation changed. Doesn't matter that we lose the law of the 1913, the Second Balkan War. He always tried to find a way to protect the Macedonian Bulgarian. He always recognized the enemy, so he tried to create the chetas to protect the population in Macedonia, and he knew it that the power of the Serbia and Greece is larger than Macedonian chetas, but he always tried to find the smartest way to protect the villages, the cities, and until to the end, he always been very, very active. Even when he had the health issues, he tried to use the time for recovering to be a teacher and to get more people to the idea of the independent Macedonia.
Well, it's an interesting factoid that actually his Chetas at one point were the largest military faction in the armed forces because under the New Treaty, Bulgaria was actually not allowed to appear in Macedonia, and the Chetas were the largest military units in Bulgaria to defend the country. Okay, anybody else? And then I'll give it. Okay, let me just have it.
Of your presentation, you mentioned that Todorov was instrumental in getting Bulgaria involved in the war. Are you talking about World War I?
Yes.
And is that considered good that he got Bulgaria involved?
Well, in history, whether it's good or bad, it's hard to determine. My thought is he was actually instrumental in getting Bulgaria to join the Triple Alliance, which at that time was actually winning on the battlefield, and was offering if Bulgaria were to join to gain territorial expansion in Macedonia. And Aleksandrov saw that as an opportunity to liberate Macedonia from the Greeks and the Serbs by getting the Bulgarians defeat the Greeks and Serbs in the war, which is where he organized the Valandovo action, the Valandovo operation, as a result of which he slaughtered a whole bunch of Serbian police and armed forces. And of course, the Serbs used excessive force, and that was used as an occasion for Bulgaria to step in the war. Serbs were suffering, were having a hard time to defeat Austro-Hungarians, were being actually defeated. So Bulgaria attacked quickly and entered into the war. Listen, we go back in history. We could correct many things. We could try that to do it as an intellectual exercise. It's called counterfactuals. But it's not going to help us understand. It's important that that is how in 1950 he envisioned the liberation of Macedonia, through a military conflict in which Bulgaria is involved and kicks Greece and Serbia out. Once that did materialize in 1990, he envisioned the liberation of Macedonia as an independent Macedonia. So the same guy with the same ideas 4 years later changes because the environment changed. That was my point. But the question was excellent. Thank you so much. Greg had a question here.
I'm curious. The MPO was created a year before his death. He's the one who requested it. What was the reaction here within the MPO after his assassination? Because I'm sure that there was a lot of, as you were saying, the theory everybody is accepting is that it was an internal disagreement that led to his assassination. So my question is, do we know if that spilled over into the MPO? How people reacted to that? I mean, are there any records? Is there anything that shows that?
Robert, you want to actually answer both the question and make a comment? Please go ahead.
I want to ask you about the assassination. And here they publish articles about it.
So this has been commemorated and well documented. I'm not an expert on the history of MPO. That's why there needs to be an expert. It has certainly reflected the whole politics. Boyan.
Yeah, that's a very good question, by the way. While Aleksandrov was alive, the MPO was following the course of him, was following his strategic guidelines. Once he died, there were some internal discussions within the MPO because there were the split head. When Todor Aleksandrov died, all those factions were united under his leadership, under his authority, and underneath the populist slogan of Macedonia for the Macedonians and freedom or death, it fell apart. So Imro, there was nominally called, there were two center-right splinter groups. The former was Imro led by Ivan Mikhailov, Imro led by General Alexander Protoverov, and there was a communist Imro. Because Imro United, that was formed by communist members of the Imro under Todor Aleksandrov. In the MPO, there were discussions, and the majority decided to follow the directions of Ivan Mikhailov. So for many decades, especially during the Cold War, the MPO was influenced directly, later also indirectly by the positions of Ivan Mikhailov on historic issues, on then erstwhile issues on the Macedonian question. In the 1990s, during the leadership of Ivan Lebanov, they modernized the organization, reformed the organization, and they, in a way that they maintained the legacy of Ivan Mikhailov and his fight for his view on the Macedonian history, while opening up the MPO for the pluralistic reality of the Macedonian identity in North America. And that's where we are now currently. We are celebrating our diversity. Any person of Macedonian origin is welcome to the MPO. However, we in a very sacred manner also cherish our history. We are proud of our history. We are proud of the Macedonian-Bulgarian identity, the Macedonian-Bulgarian heritage of our founders, which is in the center of our ethos. But that does not mean that we trump on the rights of anybody else to call themselves or anyone. And I would like to, if it's okay, to read something by Jordan Lebanov. What really made me back to what brought me immense joy is to see that these three gentlemen from the MPO, proud members of the MPO, made a presentation about a topic that is very divisive in the Balkans. And they did it in such a refined manner, with pride, and using facts, arguments, and historical references. I hope by doing this, we will send a message to the people in your country to show them that yes, these topics are divisive, but they should not divide us. We can discuss about their history, discuss about what to be Macedonian meant in those days when Todor Aleksandrov operated. And we can go, that does not prevent us from reconciling with the people that were previously divided, especially during the Cold War. If it's okay, only 1 second, I would like to quote an article by Jordan Lebanov. He was a past president of the MPO. He says Fort Wayne, like other cities, has a diverse Macedonian community. Some feel they are Macedonian Bulgarian descent, some are Greek Macedonians, and others simply Macedonian. I'm friends with all. Many of my friends speak Ponashi, not necessarily the literally Bulgarian I learned, but the languages of Baba and Deva. And then he says the debates as to who is a Macedonian and what our true identities must be healthy. It cannot become divisive. The MPO is big enough for all of our ideas. However, this is not to say that we should forget our founding heritage. I was brought up as a Macedonian of Bulgarian descent. But remember our mission statement. We work to make Macedonia a Switzerland of the Balkans, a place that is safe for all, a place that does not trample on any of our human rights. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bojana. Just to clarify, the idea of Switzerland of the Balkans percolated a little bit later, so we have to contextualize that. But other than that, I also was asked to remind you that we have actually a number of different books and collections of original documents. Check the pictures. There are several of them. Stoyan will, they're mostly, almost all of them are actually Drago Bogdanov's own work of creating those assembled. There's a book about Macedonian Patriotic Organization in color, and also there's one about the declarations of MPO chapters, and then there is also of the declarations of the Macedonian Patriotic Organization in defense of Macedonian Bulgarians. And there's also Imoro books on Imoro. So,
Ivan, let me just answer.
Yes, please, please.
Because there's an answer. There was a question, how was this reflected at the MPO? Whatever was happening in Europe, and it was reflected immensely. When MPO was created, interestingly enough, the MPO sent a letter to the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party of the Soviet Union, actually trying to advocate for free Macedonia in 21, 22. And so whatever was going there when the communists were really trying to get over the Imro. The same was here because MPO was the legal arm of the organization. So it affected immensely. After that, the first editor, Zografov, was basically expelled because he was proto-Geroist. So it was until Jordan Shkatrov came and Arsen Avramov, the guy of Ivan Mikhailov, was appointed second editor and so on. So it was, we had MPO congresses at that time that were discussing ad infinitum, Proto-Gerov or Ivan Mikhailov. And basically all the people who came to the MPO were people from Vardar organization that Ivan Mikhailov and Shkatrov created. So you can look at the fight at that time at Imro between the old generation, which is Proto-Gerov, General Proto-Gerov, and Ivan Mikhailov, who was 26, 27 years old. And all his people were basically students of law at the Sofia University. So Petar Ratsev, Arsen Avramov, Lyuben Dimitrov, they are all from the same group. They came here, and that's what defined the MPO base. And another point, the Proto-Gerov group was the Ohrid group, and this was the Shtip group, So
Proto-Gerov didn't have the numbers, basically.
Proto-Gerov, and it's very useful to follow what happened with these guys later. Proto-Gerov, unfortunately, he was a general in reserve, but activated. But he had a dream of becoming a Macedonian king. The Italian will appointed him a king, similar to what they did with the Albanian king. So Italy was supporting Imro at the time. So unfortunately, Proto-Gerov started to work for the Serbs and their documents that, basically going against Ivan Mikhailov, and the whole mess, happened after that with killing. But it did transfer to MPO immensely. I mean, it was really, really hard. And
it's a miracle it lasted.
Absolutely.
Because that could have destroyed everything.
Absolutely. And that's what we discussed yesterday at the meeting. Things in Europe do reflect and do affect us here. The church issues were brought from Europe. The communist things, they called it. But keep in mind, 1921, it was a very tough year. 22, the communists were at that time in Bulgaria. They're very aggressive. They're very similar to Al Qaeda right now. They were organizing, the terrorist attacks. They, bombing churches, and they were extremely, it's not like, intellectual communists that we discussed here. And it was a big importance for them to get Imro on their side. And they succeeded by bribing, I think, Petar Chulev and Proto-Gerov. And finally, by what happened, basically it split the organization.
Just one more question.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a well-known fact that MPO is created upon the border of the world. Do you get any evidences or what is the link between these decisions and orders?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's created under the order, but once it was created, the difference is illegal organization, which is the Imro. They were hiding and fighting, and legal, which are the Bulgarian organizations of immigrants, and the organization in the United States. And so the organizations was not created by them, by Todor Aleksandrov. But once it was created, he definitely sent Jordan Shkatrov and to organize it. And before Jordan Shkatrov came, there were many fractions. Jordan basically set up the tribunes, set up the conventions, set up everything, and basically cleared the direction. He was a fantastic organizer. Unfortunately, he was, as you probably know, his brother and himself, he died in a Skopje prison in 1946. That's the big thing. When Jordan Shkatrov came to the United States, and I'll mention that again, he gave an interview for the New York Times, sending the Macedonians want an independent state. That's the title. We are talking about 1924. It's impressive. And that is the guy that was basically killed in Yugoslav Macedonia when independent Yugoslav Macedonia was created within Yugoslavia. So that tells you everything basically about the continuity about the old and then whatever was happening afterwards. And that is the sadness of the Macedonian question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ke te pitam babo, pravo da mi kažeš. Nešto ke te pitam babo, pravo da mi kažeš. Pravo da mi kažeš babo, bez da me izlažeš. Pravo da mi kažeš babo, bez da me izlažeš. Vojvodi bea babo uvasna večera. Koji vojvodi bea babo uvasna večera. Da li Gotse Delchev babo ili Damen Gruev. Da li Gotse Delchev babo ili Damen Gruev. Pitaš abre ago pravo ke ti kažam. Kad me pitaš abre ago pravo ke ti kažam. Pravo ke ti kažam ago bez da te izlažam. Pravo ke ti kažam ago bez da te izlažam. Gotse Delchev ago, ni tu Damen Gruev. Ni tu Gotse Delchev ago, ni tu Damen Gruev. Naj si beše abre ago Todor Aleksandrov. Todor